Are you sure you're awake right now? Or are you just listening to an audio recording, while in reality you're lying on a bed in an unimaginably vast dimension, having a decades-long, incredibly realistic dream? Don't rush to refute me, and don't turn this off yet. Give me 10 minutes. I might not be able to wake you up, but I can at least make you aware of the bed frame when you turn over. We live such exhausting lives, especially at this age. You look in the mirror and see gray hairs, deeper wrinkles. Your body feels like a rusty machine. Every movement reminds you of your age. You see your children's busy and distant backs. You look at the numbers in your bank account that can't buy you health. And don't you often feel an unspeakable anxiety? That feeling is like being trapped in a predetermined program. No matter how much you struggle, you can't escape birth, aging, sickness, death, unfulfilled desires, and separation from loved ones. Have you ever considered that the reason this pain is so real, so suffocating, is precisely because you are a good actor? You're too deeply immersed in the role? You've taken every line, every conflict, every tear in the script as the only reality. But what if I told you that cutting-edge modern physics is shaking hands with the person who sat under the Bodhi tree thousands of years ago? They both point to a truth that will send chills down your spine. This world has no so-called physical reality. It's just a huge, intricate holographic image projected by your consciousness. Sounds absurd, right? Let's broaden our perspective. Imagine you're sitting in a movie theater. A tragedy is playing on the screen. The protagonist experiences the destruction of their family, crying heartbreakingly. You, sitting in the audience, also shed tears. Your heart races. In that moment, your physical reactions are real, your emotions are real, but is the person on the screen real? No, that's just a beam of light shining through a film onto a white screen. If you rush up and stab the screen with a knife because the protagonist is killed, besides having to pay for the damage and being escorted out by security, you won't change anything in the plot. Tragically, in real life, we do the same foolish things every day. We try to make ourselves feel better by changing the people, events, and environment around us. We desperately try to mold our children into what we want them to be, to transform our partners into compliant tools, and to force our aging bodies back to their 20s. But what's the result? The screen is broken, but the light remains. And the next frame is still a tragedy. Because you've forgotten the most important thing. You're not just an audience member, you're also the projector. This brings us to a very famous story, not a superstition, but a top-tier philosophical experiment about time and illusion. In ancient Indian scriptures, there was an ascetic who felt he had reached a high level of spiritual attainment, so he went to ask the Creator what illusion was. He wanted to see the truth of the world. The Creator smiled and said, "You want to see the truth? Fine, but I'm thirsty right now. Go to the river and fetch me a bowl of water." The ascetic thought this was too simple. He took his bowl and went to the river. Just as he bent down to scoop up the water, he saw a beautiful woman walking on the opposite bank. In that instant, he was stunned. The woman was so beautiful. Her eyes captivated his soul like a hook. He forgot about fetching the water and involuntarily followed the woman into the village. Because he was also handsome and learned, he quickly gained the favor of the woman's parents, and naturally, he got married. This marriage lasted a lifetime. He completely forgot who he was. Forgot the Creator who was still waiting for water under the tree. He was immersed in worldly happiness, had 3 children, built a big house, and acquired land. He began to work hard for a living, worried about his children's education, and argued over neighborhood disputes. He experienced the death of his parents, business failures, and the warmth of family life. Even you, as a listener, hearing this, might feel that this is just like our own lives, isn't it? We spend our lives busy, exhausting ourselves for our small families and for the sake of appearances. Then disaster struck. That year there was a great flood. The river overflowed, houses were swept away, and fields were submerged. He struggled in the floodwaters, holding his wife with one hand and his child with the other. A wave crashed over them, and his youngest child was swept away. Before he could even cry out, another wave carried his wife away. Finally, he himself was swallowed by the flood. The feeling of suffocation, despair, and coldness was so real that he wanted to end his own life. He struggled desperately in the water, shouting to the heavens, "Help! I can't take it anymore. Let me die." The moment he uttered those words, the surrounding floodwaters suddenly disappeared, the coldness vanished, and the heart-wrenching pain disappeared. He suddenly opened his eyes and found himself standing by the riverbank, still holding the bowl, only half filled. He was drenched in sweat, gasping for breath, as if he had just died and come back to life. Then, the voice of the Creator came from behind him, "Have you fetched the water? I only waited for you for half a minute. But you look like you've lived a lifetime. Do you understand?" The ascetic had experienced decades of marriage and raising children in the illusion, experiencing profound pain. But in the real dimension, it was only half a minute. This is not just a story, this is our current situation. You worry about your pension, you can't sleep all night because of a minor ache. And your blood pressure rises because of something your future daughter-in-law says. You feel that this pain is so real, just like the ascetic felt the suffocation in the flood was so real. But what if when this life ends, you suddenly wake up and find yourself standing by that river in a higher dimension? And these decades of life were merely a brief moment of distraction? How would you feel? Wouldn't you want to slap yourself and ask yourself, why did I torment myself for so long over such trivial things in that dream? At this point, some scientifically minded friends will surely jump in and say, this is idealism. The material world is objectively real. Okay, let's talk science, and hard science at that. David Bohm, one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century and a colleague of Einstein, proposed a theory that shocked the scientific community, the holographic universe theory. What is a holographic universe? Imagine a family photo. If you tear it in half, one half only shows you, and the other half only shows your spouse. That's an ordinary photo. But a hologram is different. If you tear it into 100 pieces, and you pick up any small fragment and shine a laser on it, you can still see a complete family photo. What does this mean? It means that every tiny particle in the universe contains all the information of the entire universe. The whole exists within the part, and the part contains the whole. Doesn't this sound familiar? Eastern wisdom explained this thoroughly 2,000 years ago. The Tiantai school of Buddhism has a supreme principle: one thought contains 3,000 worlds. What does that mean? Your current thought, though small and insignificant, contains the entire universe of 3,000 worlds. This isn't just rhetoric, it's a kind of description in physics. Your brain isn't a storage device, it's more like the lens of a holographic projector. The external world is originally a chaotic wave of energy, without color, sound, or shape. Your brain receives these waves and, according to your built-in programs and filters, renders them into the world you see now. So it's not because the world is terrible that I'm suffering. The truth is, because my heart is filled with frequencies of suffering, I project a terrible world. This brings us to the current situation of many middle-aged and elderly people. Why do they feel more and more bitter as they get older? Why do they feel that the world is increasingly hostile towards them? Because their projector is stuck. Think about it. What kind of thoughts are running through their minds? They wake up in the morning and sigh, "Oh, my back hurts again." Am I going to get sick again? See? You're emitting the frequency of back pain. And the holographic universe immediately accepts the order, mobilizing the surrounding energy to cooperate with your body, making you feel more pain and stiffness. At lunchtime, I remembered that my child hadn't called for several days, and I felt a pang of sadness, thinking that raising an ungrateful child was useless, and that I would only be a burden in my old age. The frequency of this negative emotion you're emitting will immediately manifest in your holographic universe as an even more distant parent-child relationship. Next time your child calls, you'll subconsciously speak in a complaining tone, pushing them even further away. At night, before going to sleep, you think about the injustices you suffered in your youth. About that heartless relative, about the missed opportunities to get rich. The more you think about it, the angrier you get. You're emitting frequencies of lack and anger. And these will constantly appear in your life. These little things, stepping in dog poop on your way out, getting shortchanged at the grocery store, you think it's bad luck, but no, you've been writing, directing, and starring in your own life story. You're a brilliant screenwriter, but you're writing only horror films and melodramas. The scariest part is that you're addicted to it, believing yourself to be the victim. A single thought can encompass 1,000 worlds. If your thought is of hell, the surrounding 3,000 worlds instantly collapse into hell. If your thought is of a hungry ghost, the surroundings instantly become a place of scarcity and hunger. If your thought is of an asura, the surroundings instantly become a place of conflict and jealousy. Conversely, if your thought is of compassion and gratitude, even if you live in a leaky, dilapidated house, that moment's new universe is paradise. I know many people will say I'm talking nonsense. That their illness is real, their lack of money is real, and how can they change their thoughts? I'm not asking you to pretend you don't see it, but to look at it from a different perspective. It's like watching a horror movie. When the ghost appears, you're terrified. At this point, you have two choices. First, scream, cover your eyes, and have a heart attack. Second, suddenly realize, oh, that's just an actor in makeup, that blood is ketchup, and the camera is right there. When you realize this, is the fear still there? Maybe a little, but it can no longer harm you. You might even find it a little funny. We're not changing the external plot, we're changing our consciousness. Here are 3 very practical mental techniques. I won't keep you in suspense. I'll give them to you directly. You don't need to burn incense or pray to Buddha, nor do you need to spend money on rituals. You only need to make a slight adjustment at the moment you have a thought. The first method is called pause and replace. When you encounter bad things in life, such as suddenly losing money, your first reaction is definitely anger and anxiety. At this time, please be sure to press that red pause button for yourself. Mentally tell yourself, this is a dream, this is a holographic projection. This 1-second pause is crucial. It cuts off your habitual connection to that negative energy. Then immediately implant an opposite thought. For example, if your child is disobedient, you were about to get angry, but you pause. And then think, he's playing a rebellious role to hone my temper. This child is a really good actor. Even if it's sarcastic, your frequency has changed. As long as you don't accept that ball of anger, that angry emotion won't be able to take hold. The second method is called microscopic visualization. This is especially suitable for friends with health problems. Spend 10 minutes every day with your eyes closed. Where does it hurt? Imagine your body not as a solid mass of flesh, but as being composed of 10,000 shimmering particles, which is also true in physics, as atoms are 99.99% empty space. Since it's mostly empty space, where do illnesses attach themselves? Where do tumors attach themselves? If you contemplate that emptiness and visualize light passing through your body, you'll find that many chronic pains are actually solidified there by your attention. The more you focus on it and think, "This is my illness," the more solid it becomes. But if you view it as empty space, as something dispersed, due to the observer effect, that energy knot will actually loosen. This isn't Qigong. This is the application of quantum mechanics at the physiological level. The third method, and the most difficult one, is to treat everything as a gift. This requires immense courage. When hardship strikes, do you dare to say, "Okay, what are you trying to teach me?" The person who causes you pain might be there to teach you forgiveness. The illness that afflicts you might be a reminder to rest and let go of your attachment to material things. When you begin to thank your enemies, according to the laws of the holographic universe, higher dimensional energy always overrides lower dimensional energy. Gratitude and compassion are the highest frequency energies in the universe. When you are at this frequency, low frequency misfortunes simply cannot touch you. Using the same analogy, we are all dreaming, but there are masters and novices in dreaming. Novices are chased by tigers in their dreams, sweating profusely and terrified, while masters see the tiger, smile slightly, and think, "This big cat looks quite majestic, I'll just ride it around." The tiger is still the same tiger. The dream is still the same dream, but because your mindset has changed, the situation is instantly reversed. In the second half of life, it's not about wealth or power. It's about this kind of mindset. You don't need to go to remote mountains to cultivate yourself. Your home, your living room, even arguing with your spouse in the kitchen, that's your training ground. Every thought and intention is an opportunity to choose a different version of the universe. One moment you're regretting past events, and in that moment you're living in a gray holographic image. The next moment you look at the sunlight outside the window and think how wonderful it is to be alive today, and in that moment you instantly leap into a colorful holographic image. This switch is faster than the speed of light because it's just a thought. Don't underestimate this single thought. Think about it. What would happen if all of humanity simultaneously emitted a single thought of pure goodwill? Perhaps wars would cease and plagues would disappear. Of course, we can't control all of humanity. You absolutely have control over your own little universe. Whether your later years are bleak or peaceful, whether you're plagued by illness or full of vitality, doesn't depend on how much Social Security pays you, or whether your children come home or not. It only depends on what kind of movie you want to project with your own projector. At this point, you might still think, "Oh, I understand the theory, but I just can't control it." That's okay. Not being able to control it is also part of the plot. Don't blame yourself for not being able to control it. That's just another layer of negative projection. You just need to quietly observe that uncontrollable self, like a child throwing a tantrum. Smile, pat its head, and say, "Okay, I know you're hurting, it's okay, it's all an illusion." The moment you acknowledge that it's okay, the karmic chain is broken. Finally, I want to leave you with an image. Imagine you're watching a truly wonderful movie. The movie is almost over. At this point, would you desperately cling to the armrest, crying and refusing to let the credits roll, or would you stand up, stretch, and sigh, "That was a great performance, even with the pauses. It was quite enjoyable," and then turn around and walk out of the theater into the bright, real world outside? Remember, if you close your eyes right now, stop judging, stop reminiscing, and stop thinking about anything in the external world. Does this noisy world still exist? Perhaps it never existed at all. The only thing that exists is yourself and your inherently complete heart that can give rise to all things. So, have you decided what kind of scene you want to play in the next act? The remote control is always in your own hands.